Hey everyone, and welcome back. Are you ready for another deep dive? Today we're looking into a story that's wild. It's like something right out of like a crazy financial thriller movie, you know? We're talking Argentina. Argentina's economy and like it's shaking things up big time. And you know who's noticed? Elon Musk.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. What's happening is Argentina just did a complete U-turn economically. I mean, for the first time in over a century, they're not running a deficit. They're actually running surpluses.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? It's almost like, one of those high wire acts and the guy leading the charge. Argentina's new president, Javier Milei, he's doing it all. Cutting government spending, selling off state companies, devaluing the currency. It's a whirlwind of, what people are calling chainsaw reforms.
Chainsaw reforms. That's a pretty good way to put it, actually.
Yeah.
They're just like dismantling decades of, government involvement in the economy. Like a chainsaw just cuts right through, wood. And it's not just small changes. This is like a total overhaul. They're really trying to shrink the government's role and let the market, do its thing.
And the results, so far at least, they're pretty eye-catching. I mean, remember when Argentina was basically a synonym for debt, like financial instability? Well, guess what? They've actually got these things called fiscal surpluses, meaning they're bringing in more than they're spending. That's something they haven't done in like over 100 years. It's a big deal.
It is. Even the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, those guys are known for being super cautious, But even they're saying that Argentina is going to see 5% economic growth in 2025. That kind of optimism from the IMF, it means something. They're seeing some real potential for change here. And it's driven by things like, foreign investment coming in and a more competitive export market, all thanks to that, currency devaluation.
Okay, so we've got this crazy economic experiment happening, making news all over the world. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Enter Elon Musk, tech genius, innovator, and turns out huge fan of what Argentina's doing.
Oh, yeah. Musk has been very outspoken, about his support for all these reforms that Milei is making. He even tweeted, like literally tweeted, government reform brings prosperity to Argentina. That's a pretty big endorsement coming from a guy like Musk. And, he's always been big on like limited government and free markets. So him coming out and saying this, well, it definitely puts Argentina's, economic experiment in the spotlight.
Sure. It's almost like Musk is acting as like an amplifier. His support is drawing even more attention to what's happening in Argentina, attracting investors, media, the whole nine yards. It really makes you wonder, how much do you think his support is actually, shaping public opinion, not just in Argentina, but like worldwide?
That's a tough one. It's a really complex question. I mean, people tend to listen to the people they respect. Right. And Musk. He definitely has a massive following. But then there's the other side. Does one person, even someone as influential as Musk, should they really have that much power over a country's economic future? I don't know.
It's an interesting point. It definitely makes you think, right? Like, are the lines between business, tech, and, global politics, are they blurring? Maybe they are. But let's shift gears for a second. Let's talk about how these reforms are actually being received, in Argentina. You mentioned all the positive economic stuff, but we're also seeing protests. People are worried about the cost of living going up. So how do we make sense of, these two sides?
Right. It's important to acknowledge that. You can have all these positive numbers, all the economic data looking good, but that doesn't always capture what it's like for people actually living through these changes. It's a bit like, well, you see those before and after pictures of house renovations, right? The after always looks amazing, sleek and modern, right? But it doesn't show you the mess, all the dust and noise and chaos, the disruption that went into making it happen. And in Argentina, it's like that renovation is happening on a national scale. It affects everyone.
Yeah, I get it. So it's like the before and after, but for a whole country. And, while some people are celebrating the idea of economic growth, other folks are struggling to adjust to like how fast everything's changing.
Exactly. You can't just look at the numbers. You have to listen to the people who are actually going through it. Remember that YouTube video we saw? Those protests? It really showed you how, progress isn't always a straight line. There are going to be bumps in the road. And those bumps represent real challenges for real people.
For sure. It's like those time-lapse construction videos. You just see the building going up super fast, but what you don't see is the sweat, the effort, the little setbacks along the way. And in Argentina, that construction project is a national one.
Right. It's massive. These chainsaw reforms are a huge undertaking. It's bound to be messy and disruptive in the short term, even if the ultimate goal is a better, more functional economy.
And just like with any construction project, there's always a chance that things could go wrong. What kind of obstacles do you think Argentina might face as they keep going down this path of, you know, fast reform?
Well, one thing that worries people is whether these changes can last. Can Argentina keep up this momentum, or will they hit a wall? And then there's the issue of, income inequality. If the
Hmm.
economy grows, will everyone benefit equally, or will it just make the gap between the rich and the poor even bigger? These are big questions. And honestly, the answers will determine whether this economic experiment is really a success in the long run.
It's almost like watching like a high wire act, you know?
Hmm.
The performer is trying to get across all these obstacles and you're on the edge of your seat hoping they make it. But there's always that tension, that uncertainty.
Exactly. The whole world is watching. What happens in Argentina could have ripple effects way beyond their borders. If it works, it could inspire other countries to try similar things. But if it fails, it could be a cautionary tale about changing too much, too fast.
So it's like we've got this mix of economics, technology, global politics, and real people's stories all happening in Argentina. It really shows how connected our world is.
It does.
Yeah.
And that's what makes deep dives like this so valuable. They help us go beyond just the headlines, the sound bites. We can really get into the details and understand the nuances. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's like we're putting together a puzzle. Every article, every tweet, every video clip we look at, it's another piece. Helps us see the whole picture more clearly. It's a process, for sure.
And as we go deeper, we start asking better questions. What does this all mean in the long term? What are the ethical considerations? How will it affect people's everyday lives? Not just in Argentina, but potentially all over the world.
Big questions. It's like watching a documentary, but it's happening live, you know?
Ah.
We're all in the audience trying to figure out the story as it unfolds.
And the best part, we don't know the ending yet. This is a pivotal moment for Argentina. The choices they make now will have consequences for generations.
So for our listeners who've been with us on this deep dive so far, what would you say is the main takeaway?
Hmm. I'd say the most important thing is this. Don't just absorb information passively. Think about it critically. Question everything. Consider different perspectives. And most importantly, stay curious.
That's such good advice. This deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about, and I bet our listeners are feeling the same way.
I hope so. The goal is to spark that curiosity, to get people to explore the world, to be open-minded and always wanting to learn more.
Exactly. We've provided some tools and context. Now it's up to our listeners to keep exploring and see where it takes them.
Who knows what they'll discover? Maybe they'll find a new angle, a connection we missed. Or maybe they'll have their own unique insights.
The possibilities are endless. That's what makes learning so exciting. It never ends. But for now, this is the end of our deep dive. It's kind of like we're watching those dominoes fall. You know, Argentina makes this big, bold move with their economy, and then suddenly you've got Elon Musk stepping in. And it's not just about changing Argentina's economy, it could change like the whole global market for electric vehicles.
Yeah. And what's so interesting is how it makes you rethink, who really drives economic change? We usually think of governments calling the shots, right?
Yeah.
But here, it's a tech guy, an entrepreneur, and he's got a huge influence on what a whole country decides to do with their economy.
Right, which kind of makes you wonder, in a world that's getting more and more connected, are those old lines, you know, between business, tech, and like global politics, are they blurring?
It's definitely something we're seeing in other areas, too. Think about it. Tech companies are becoming major players in trade, finance, even space. The lines are getting fuzzy. But hold on. Let's go back to what we were talking about before, about how people are reacting to these reforms. It's easy to get caught up in all the excitement about growth and big visions for the future.
Mhm.
But we got to remember, there are actual people living through this.
Totally. When you look at the big picture, the economic data might look great, but that's not the whole story. We need to think about the everyday people in Argentina, hear what they're worried about. This transition, it's complicated. It's going to affect different groups in different ways.
Exactly. Numbers don't tell you everything. You have to listen to the people who are actually being affected. Remember that YouTube video we talked about? With those protests, that was a powerful reminder that progress isn't always smooth sailing. There are going to be the bumps, and those bumps, they represent real struggles for real people.
It's like those time-lapse videos of construction projects, you know? You see a building going up in, like, a minute, but you don't see the hard work, the sweat, the times when things didn't go as planned. And what's happening in Argentina, it's like that construction project, but on a national scale. Millions of lives are being affected.
I like that analogy. It really captures what's going on. These chainsaw reforms, they're a massive change. It's bound to be messy, disruptive, at least for a while, even if the goal is to end up with a stronger, more prosperous economy in the long run.
And with any big project, there's always the risk of running into problems down the line. What do you think? What are some of the obstacles Argentina might have to deal with as they keep pushing forward with these rapid reforms?
Well, one of the big worries is whether these changes will stick. You know, can they keep this momentum going, or will they hit a wall? And then there's the whole question of, what about the gap between the rich and the poor? Will everyone benefit equally from economic growth, or will it just make the rich richer and leave the poor behind? These are really important questions, and the answers, well, they're going to determine whether this whole experiment actually works out in the long term.
It's kind of nerve-wracking, isn't it? Like watching someone walk a tightrope. You're just hoping they don't fall.
Yeah, and the whole world's watching. What happens in Argentina, it could influence a lot of other countries. If they succeed, it might encourage others to be bold and try big changes too.
Mm.
But if it goes wrong, it could be a warning, a lesson about the dangers of trying to change things too fast.
So we've got all this stuff happening in Argentina, economics, tech, global politics, and then the stories of the people actually living through it. It's a powerful example of how connected everything is.
It really is. And that's why I love doing these deep dives. It's not just about the headlines. We get to go deeper, explore the details, understand all the complexities. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's like solving a puzzle. Every article, every tweet, every video, it's another clue. Helps us see the big picture more clearly. And it's a process, It takes time.
And the more we explore, the better questions we start to ask. What does this all mean for the future? Are there ethical things we need to think about? How will this affect people's lives, not just in Argentina, but everywhere?
Wow, yeah, big questions. It's like we're watching a documentary, but it's happening live. We're all trying to understand what's going on as the story unfolds.
And the best part, we don't know the ending yet. This is a turning point for Argentina. What happens now will shape their future for a long time.
So what do you think? For our listeners who have been on this journey with us, what's the most important thing to take away from all this?
The key takeaway for me is this. Don't just sit back and let the information wash over you. Think about it. Challenge your own ideas. Consider different viewpoints. And most importantly, never stop being curious.
That's great advice. This deep dive has definitely made me think. I bet our listeners are feeling the same way.
I hope so. That's the goal, right? To spark curiosity. To encourage people to go out and explore the world with an open mind, always eager to learn.
Absolutely. We've given them the tools and the background information. Now it's their turn to keep digging and see where it leads them.
Exactly. Who knows what they'll find? Maybe they'll uncover something we missed. Or maybe they'll come up with their own insights.
The possibilities are endless. That's what makes learning so much fun. You never know what you'll discover. But for now, we've reached the end of our deep dive. So we've talked about a lot, haven't we? Argentina's, big economic experiment, Elon Musk's role in all of this. But, it's complicated, right? We've only just, dipped our toes in.
Right. That's the thing about these deep dives. They make you think. They leave you with more questions than answers, which I guess is a good thing. Makes you want to learn more.
Exactly. So let's take a minute and think about some of the big questions that came up. What happens in the long run? What do these chainsaw reforms really mean for the people of Argentina? Will it actually lead to a better life for them? Or will there be new problems?
Yeah. And what about Musk?
Yeah.
Those investments he's thinking about making, especially with the lithium. What's that going to do to Argentina? Will they become like a major player in the electric car world? Or will they run into some, unexpected problems?
It's hard to say. Only time will tell, I guess. But at least now we've got a better idea of what's going on. We've thought about these tough questions.
We've become more informed, right? Better at critical thinking, more aware of how everything in the world is connected. And that's what the deep dive's all about, isn't it?
Totally. So to our listener, I want to say, don't let this be the end of the conversation. Keep learning, keep asking questions.
The world's an amazing place.
Yeah.
Full of stories waiting to be discovered. And who knows? Maybe you'll be the one to make the next big discovery.
That's right. So until next time, keep diving deep.